During class, Marty notices his students getting distracted as they watch a fire truck and police cars speed by outside. They tell him there's been another earthquake in California and a huge section of land has sunk into the ocean. Marty tries to check the news, but the internet is down. Later, he's scheduled to meet the parents of all his students, but everyone is restless because the internet still isn't working. He has paper copies of his students' records, but it's not enough. The lack of internet makes people feel like the end is near. When Marty leaves the school, he ends up stuck in traffic since the stoplights are out. While driving, he spots a sign above a bank thanking someone named Chuck for 39 great years. Soon, news spreads from around the globe reporting the same disasters. Coastal towns vanishing into the sea, volcanic eruptions, wildfires, and tsunamis. In China, riots have already begun. Meanwhile, Marty's ex-wife, Felicia, works as a nurse at the hospital. For weeks, they've been losing staff members to self-deletion, and watching coworkers die has taken a toll on her. She takes a break in the restroom, only to hear another radio broadcast where the host also thanks Chuck for 39 years. When a colleague asks her which is easier, marriage or divorce, Felicia says marriage, because it's over in an hour, while divorce drags on for months. That evening, Felicia calls Marty and admits she's been thinking about him all day. She wonders if separated couples are getting back together for comfort during these hard times, sharing examples of coworkers who left their jobs to be with family. Marty mentions that many of his students have stopped showing up and reflects on humanity's tiny place in the universe. Felicia brings up the Chuck ad she saw earlier, and Marty says he noticed it too. They question why someone would be putting up ads during the end of the world, but neither knows who Chuck is. After they hang up, Marty tries watching TV, but the signal cuts out just like the internet. Then, Chuck's face appears with an announcer thanking him for 39 great years, before the screen goes dark again. The next morning, Marty notices his neighbor isn't using his car. The man explains he had to walk 3 miles to and from work because a sinkhole has split the city in half, swallowing cars along the way. Traffic is backed up everywhere else, meaning Marty probably won't make it to school until midday. They talk about the latest news. California has lost 90% of its land. The Midwest is on fire, Florida is underwater, and the nation's main food-producing regions are gone. Europe is suffering the same fate. Famine has overtaken Asia. 1 million are dead. The plague has returned, and bees may only exist in South America now. Soon, Marty sees many neighbors returning home after failing to get to work. The sinkhole has swallowed their cars, and even their workplaces. Marty talks to a friend of Felicia's who worked at the bank, asking about the Chuck sign, but she has no clue either. The streets are filled with people looking hopeless, and Marty's neighbor comments that everyone is moving through the stages of grief. At first there were protests and riots, followed by a wave of self-deletion, and now most people have accepted what's coming. Their conversation is interrupted by a plane writing "Thanks, Chuck" in the sky. On her way to work, Felicia sees walls covered in graffiti dedicated to Chuck. She walks to the hospital only to find it empty. No staff, no patients, but all the monitors are still on, each showing the exact same heartbeat in perfect sync. The beds are vacant, yet it's as if they're all connected to a single person. Later, Marty grows frustrated when the TV still has no signal. He tries calling Felicia, but the phone lines are dead. Deciding to find her, he walks through town, passing abandoned cars and more Chuck ads. He spots Sam sitting on a bench and asks if he knows who Chuck is, but Sam doesn't. Sam says he's asked others too, and no one seems to know. Since they're headed the same way, they walk together, talking about how much time a person truly has in life. Eventually, Sam's arthritis forces him to rest on a bench to watch the sunset, so Marty continues alone. By evening, Marty reaches Felicia's neighborhood. He meets Iris, who remembers Felicia fondly for giving cookies to the local kids. Iris is skating because she wants to enjoy herself before the end. Suddenly, the entire neighborhood loses power, and Marty tells Iris to go home for safety. Glowing Chuck ads appear in every house window, giving the area a ghostly feel. Marty hurries and finally finds Felicia, embracing her. She also doesn't know how the ad appeared inside her home. Meanwhile, Chuck, now revealed to be a 39-year-old man, is lying in bed, frail and ill, hooked to a heart monitor showing the same rhythm as at the hospital. His wife, Jenny, and son, Brian, are at his side, cry because they know his time is almost up. Back with Marty and Felicia, they sit in her backyard admiring the night sky. With the world's power gone, the stars are brighter than ever. They hold hands, naming constellations, until one star disappears, followed by Mars, and then more stars, one after another. At the same time, Jenny and Brian say their goodbyes to Chuck, thanking him for 39 great years, just before he passes. Marty starts to tell Felicia he loves her, but everything goes black as the world comes to an end. 9 months before the world ends, Taylor works in a record store. But her true passion for music makes her set up her drums on a busy street corner, playing for passersby. Sometimes she gets a few tips, though not often. Meanwhile, Janice is heading home in a foul mood after her boyfriend dumped her over text. She works at a bookstore, but feels like her life is stuck, especially since she used to be a gifted dancer when she was young. Chuck is also in town for a banking conference. He's a successful accountant at a prestigious bank, has stayed loyal to Jenny since high school, and is proud of Brian for doing well in school. Still, he's unhappy because his job bores him and he can't stand other accountants. When Taylor spots Chuck looking so serious as he walks by, she starts playing an upbeat rhythm to lift his spirits. To her surprise, he stops in front of her, hesitates, then begins to dance. A crowd quickly gathers, including Janice, who's desperate for something joyful in her life. She starts dancing too, so Chuck pulls her into the center, and together they move to Taylor's beat. Soon Chuck feels a sharp pain in his head, but he blames it on his glasses, removes them, and keeps going. The crowd loves the show, clapping and cheering while filling Taylor's hat with tips. Afterward, the three go to a cafe, and Taylor splits the money. Chuck looks unwell, but insists he's fine. Curious, Taylor asks what made him stop to dance, but Chuck says he isn't sure, though he's thinking about his old band. When Taylor leaves, she hugs them both and calls them buskers forever. Chuck and Janice then stroll together. Janice talks about her breakup, and Chuck reassures her she'll get through it. They part ways, and Chuck notices Iris skating nearby and sees the empty corner, still wondering why he danced in the first place. Later, when his illness leaves him too weak to chew or walk, Chuck will remember that dance and believe it's the reason God created the world. As a child of 7, Chuck lives with his grandparents after losing his parents in a car accident. His mother was pregnant at the time. The home stays heavy with grief for a long while. Albie copes by drinking and focusing on his accounting work. Sarah loses interest in her hobbies and usually orders takeout instead of cooking. By the time Chuck turns 10, things have lightened up at home, though Albie still drinks. Sarah cooks again and listens to music while dancing, often pulling Chuck in to join her, teaching him the moves he'd later show on the street. They watch plenty of movies, especially ones with dance scenes. Their house becomes Chuck's true home, except for one off-limit spot, the cupola on the roof. Albie and Sarah claim it's unsafe and empty, but Chuck still tries to sneak in, unable to break the lock. The night before Chuck's 11th birthday, he and Albie watch a documentary about Carl Sagan and the cosmic calendar. Albie, quite drunk, answers Chuck's question about the cupola, saying it's locked because up there, someone might see more than they want. He explains that the house has been remodeled many times, but the cupola has been there from the start. In all his years, Albie has visited it only a few times, claiming he saw the ghosts of people before they died. Waiting for death, he says, is always the hardest part. When Sarah comes home, she sends Albie out for groceries to help him sober up, then tells Chuck not to believe his tales. They're just drunken nonsense. Later, Chuck asks a neighbor about the ghosts Albie mentioned and learns they're tied to Albie's guilt over failing to help certain friends. At school, Chuck's favorite subject is English. His teacher is too kind for the kids to take seriously, so they misbehave. After class one day, Chuck asks her about a poem with the line, "I am large. I contain multitudes." She explains that each person is made from everyone they've met, everything they've seen, and all they've experienced. Each person holds an entire world inside them, and they choose what to fill it with. Chuck realizes that when someone dies, their inner world disappears, and the beginning of the story is a metaphor for the world in his mind, which ends with his death. As he's leaving, Chuck sees Marty in another classroom. A few months later, Sarah dies suddenly while buying groceries. After her funeral, the home sinks back into sadness, and Albie's drinking worsens. Chuck asks the store cashier what happened, but she says Sarah simply collapsed, and there's nothing more to tell. One night, Ollie falls asleep at his desk, giving Chuck the chance to steal his keys and finally unlock the cupola. Just as Chuck is about to step inside, Ollie shouts at him and pulls him away. When Ollie goes to close the door, he spots something inside and freezes in shock. His hands shake as he forces himself to move, shutting the door before noticing Chuck in tears. He comforts his grandson, who asks what he saw, but Ollie insists it's something he shouldn't know. He hugs Chuck and apologizes. Later at school, Chuck discovers a dance club and joins it in memory of Sarah. The teacher is happy to see another boy in the mostly female group and trains them in a new music style each day. Chuck is partnered with Kat, an older girl and the best dancer in class. He develops a crush on her and tries to impress her with moves Sarah taught him, only to end up teaching everyone else. Although Kat already has a boyfriend, she agrees to be Chuck's partner for the school's fall fling. The teacher gives Chuck new shoes to make dancing easier, and he begins to imagine it as a possible career. Ollie, however, continues to tutor him in math, believing it will secure his future since art doesn't guarantee income. He explains that math is everywhere, even in music, through the way it measures notes and tempo. All of his accounting files hold entire lives as numbers. Math, he says, is an art that never lies. On the night of the fall fling, Chuck refuses to dance with Kat, claiming his leg hurts. The teacher overhears and tells him he doesn't have to dance if he no longer wants to, but he should at least be honest with Kat. Chuck steps outside, gazes at the stars, and takes time to gather his thoughts. Eventually, he returns to the party and asks Kat to dance. They perform their routine in the center of the dance floor as everyone gathers to cheer them on. Their performance is flawless, and at the end, Kat kisses Chuck on the cheek, irritating her boyfriend. 6 months before Chuck's death, he tells Ginny the truth about the scar on his hand. After the party, young Chuck heads to the football field, still dancing under the stars. He becomes so lost in the joy and freedom of dancing that he accidentally hits his hand on the fence. Ginny doesn't understand why he ever lied about it, and Chuck admits he doesn't know either. 5 years later, Ollie dies of a heart attack at home, while teen Chuck is away performing with his band. Mortician Sam informs Chuck that Ollie had already paid for his own funeral, knowing this day would come. This makes Chuck wonder if that's what Ollie saw in the cupola. Inheriting the house, Chuck chooses to stay there instead of moving in with his maternal grandparents, who later move in until he leaves for college. Ollie also left money for his education. Years later, when Chuck marries Ginny, they move into the same house. The funeral had taken place before his maternal grandparents arrived, leaving Chuck to face the loss alone. Later, Sam sends Chuck an envelope containing Ollie's personal belongings, including the keys. Chuck finally opens the locked room, finding it empty with a spotless floor. Looking out the window, he sees only the town. Feeling let down, he turns to leave, but then he experiences a vision of his older self dying in bed. This confirms that Ollie had witnessed not only the deaths of their neighbors, but also Sarah's and his own. Chuck realizes this is why Ollie said the waiting was the hardest part. When the vision fades, Chuck resolves to keep living fully, refusing to fall into despair like Ollie did. He recites the poem his teacher once taught him, reminding himself that he contains multitudes,